My friend Pedro is a bonanza of bullets and a banana. The underlying premise is to feel stylish whilst executing tricks and enemies alike. While the weapons are a pretty straightforward lineup of dual pistols and Uzis, a shotgun, assault rifle, and sniper rifle, the parkour mechanics shine as the primary content. Skateboards, rope tricks, bounce pads, propeller hats, skydives, motorcycles, levers, energy beams, buttons, split aim, kickable objects, barrels, ricochets on pants and signs, pulleys, metal blocks, disappearing platforms, and nails all contribute to the insanely varied arsenal of cool parkour crap, including the occasional pacifist level. My friend Pedro amounts to a brief yet action-packed game filled to the brim with variety, challenge, and stylish slow-motion satisfaction. Except, Pedro's slow-motion system drags the gameplay loop into the slow, tedious, and dreary depths of a trivialized challenge. The player mindlessly walks from one room to the next, while the slow-motion duration remains filled to the brim during the player's entire trip from the left side of the room to the right. The slow motion gives the player time to fire off numerous shots into the enemies before they ever have time to react, making the dodging only necessary when surrounded. If the player chooses not to use the slow motion, a volley of bullets creates a difficulty spike that incentivizes the slow motion. Why would I tackle this challenge when Pedro doesn't want me to? The player is naturally drawn toward the path of least resistance, and unfortunately, the path of least resistance is an abusive relationship with a challenge trivializing system that slows the gameplay down to a crawl and waters down the slow motion's inherent stylish merits. The slow motion needed to be a limited, in-the-moment mechanic intended to balance the challenge, pacing, and reaction times without taking away from the skill improvement over the course of the game. The perfect slow motion example is Katana Zero, which decides to only refill the gauge when not actively in slow motion. Unfortunately, the dodging is also affected by the slow motion. The endless slow motion emphasizes dodging as a get-out-of-jail-free card that only prolongs every slow and predictable encounter. However, there is a depth to the dodging that a limited slow motion could have illuminated. Set off the slow motion, fire some rounds, dodge to avoid enemy fire, then whilst dodge spinning, time your shots on either side. By not allowing full aim controls during dodging, there's a trade-off between control and invulnerability. The lack of control forces the player to shift their focus to timing and the potential movement options at hand. The lack of control is also why each and every shotgun or sniper shot feels so impactful, purposeful, and has that punch. But why did it take so long to reach the slow motion climax? For one, the constant abusable slow motion system undermined any potential positional or movement option satisfaction. Secondly, the weapons that are effective at the dodge spin shooting technique are not available from the beginning. Chapter 3's propeller hat level truly highlights the dodge spin shooting technique as a satisfying, punchy mechanic. What I didn't expect from the same propeller hat level was to find that mixing up the combat by utilizing the pistols and not dodge spin shooting can actually be effective as its own varied playstyle. Which just goes to show how my friend Pedro's pacing and flow must be discovered by the player. The crazy amounts of variation in Pedro mean little if the gameplay systems bog Pedro down and bloat the real meat of the game. So, what I decided to do was intentionally avoid the irritating key game mechanic of slow motion so I could actually improve my skill at the game. And improve I did. I learned to approach situations more carefully. I expected to dodge into advantageous positions without firing blindly at first sight of an enemy. Eventually I learned to take advantage of the time between enemy shots and their reloading times. The game now supports improvement, but only because I consciously avoided the slow motion system. Ironically enough, the skill improvement was not only more engaging, but actually created more stylish moments in the process. By the end of My Friend Pedro, I was executing tricks and shots from a mix of the slow motion and normal play, and that's what the game excelled at. The game becomes more satisfying when the player learns to perform a mix of dodges and parkour to evade incoming fire whilst maintaining control of the battle. The current endless slow motion void is not conducive to the gameplay, bogs down the experience, trivializes the challenge, and overall induces a reliance on an abusable system that destroys the game's pacing and first impressions. There's no bigger platformer pet peeve of mine than mishandled crossroads. Crossroads, or points where two or more paths intersect where the player must make a decision, should be designed in such a way that exploration takes the forefront and backtracking is minimized. Take a crossroads, for instance, where one path leads forward toward the end of the game, while the other path leads to a secret collectible, a checkpoint, an NPC, or even an optional upgrade. If I can't tell the difference between the main and side paths, then I have to guess. If I'm looking to complete each side objective and discover optional content, then I'm looking for the side path. If I guess incorrectly and end up on the main path, then the result is backtracking to the missed optional side path due to poor conveyance. And more likely than not, I won't realize I've chosen the main path until it's already too late to turn back. And sometimes that means I'm at a disadvantage for the rest of the game. If arbitrary level design continually takes me through this trial and error guessing game where I keep wasting time backtracking, or I'm frustratingly blocked off from the side path, then I'm a kamikaze playing in the game as the pilot. To solve the crossroads problem, the level design should encourage a healthy balance of exploration and guidance. There are multiple level design approaches to guidance, and Eagle Island utilizes one such approach: subdivision. Eagle Island's doorframe arrows subdivide the level into manageable chunks, so the player's guess at which path to take next isn't a frustrating compilation of trial and error attempts, but rather an engagement of exploration. The potential backtracking is only minor as a natural consequence of exploration because there's enough guidance to curate the experience. While the arrows are a great visualization for our purposes, they're redundant when the eagle statue and shop inside conveys the subdivision on their own. The two block door frames feel out of place in environments filled with nothing but nature and caves. There does exist a similar but more natural, diegetic, and nuanced signage example to resolving the trial and error crossroads problem that's more focused on direction and less on subdivision: the Metroidvania Hollow Knight. The signs are just as cuttable and aesthetically fitting as any other element, so they're mechanically consistent and a natural inclusion in the game. The signs provide general guidance towards significant landmarks like stag stations and trams. The most important landmark is the cartographer, so when he's nearby, there's a distinct and more noticeable signage with his humming and trail of paper leading to him. When tasked with discovering these important landmarks in an interconnected world, these signs can remove some of the trial and error guessing when you're at the landmark's door. Otherwise, you may find yourself near a fast travel station or the cartographer, but then guess at a path that only leads you further into the depths without your knowledge. While Eagle Island's attempt to solve the crossroads problem is mostly successful in minimizing backtracking, Hollow Knight's signage fits more naturally into the setting and ultimately promotes a better exploration experience, and at the same time minimizes trial and error. Experimentation is generally rooted in a precedency of previous successes, failures, and overall design choices in the industry. Sequels hold a particular accountability for considering past experiences to grow, experiment, and overall create a more well-rounded game. Now, riddle me this: what if A sequel decides to experiment in a completely different direction, but results in a game that forsakes and regresses any resemblance of what made the first so memorable, immersive, unique, well-designed, and engaging. Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. Dark Moon is known as Luigi's Mansion 2 in Australia, Europe, and Japan because of course keeping the 2 in the name in other countries would be too easy. Or maybe everyone except Australia, Europe, and Japan realizes that Luigi's Mansion 2 is not a sequel, because Dark Moon strips everything that made the first so memorable. Luigi's Mansion 1 focuses on unique portrait ghosts, each with their own special puzzle and figuring out how to capture them, all contained in a connected environment. The exploration was through a consistently dark and quiet mansion, leaving us to soak in the creepy atmospheric tone that permeates the game and immerses the player as if they were right there with Luigi. Dark Moon, on the other hand, comprises only a few ghost types throughout the entire game and a mission level structure that shatters any potential immersion or atmosphere. Dark Moon attempts to compensate for the lack of ghost variety by tacking on upgrades, shields, and enhancements, otherwise known as more health. While everything is interactable in both titles, the sequel now introduces a button prompt, which further reduces the immersion. Dark Moon constantly and unbearably interrupts every single action in the game with the call from EGAD, and the mystery is absent due to the introduction spelling out the culprit and exactly what happened to the Dark Moon. Meanwhile, EGAD and Luigi cannot, for the life of them, recognize King Boo and Mario throughout the game, no matter how frustratingly obvious it becomes. Dark Moon is structured through linear mission objectives, which stifles most potential exploration in the surprisingly relatively open mansions. Instead of promoting exploration, the open spaces are segmented by the missions and their arbitrary ranking systems. Dark Moon hits the bottom of the barrel with cheap jump scares as the only source of suspense in the entire game. Any potential tension or scare is projected only on Luigi and not the player because everything is through cutscenes. The cutscenes never cease and are so non-interactive that there's no chance to take advantage of any of the easy, gimme opportunities to capture the ghost right in front of our noses. In the first game, what Luigi goes through is reciprocated by the player, even down to the quiet humming he took up as a self-soothing technique. As the player, we played as and empathized with Luigi. In the second game, all we can do is watch and sympathize. At least as much as we can before the predictable novelty wears off. So, Dark Moon, plain and simple, does not follow in the footsteps of its predecessor and doesn't try to. Luigi's Mansion is a dark, uneasy, atmospheric, exploratory game. Dark Moon is a light-hearted comedy action adventure game. Sure, Dark Moon somewhat stands up on its own, but as a sequel, the comparisons are inevitable and, frankly, encouraged. The sequel can take a whole different direction, but to needlessly abandon and sacrifice every ideal, lesson learned, and design choice that made the first installment so memorable is a great tragedy in the Luigi universe. So when I preview Luigi's Mansion 3 from E3, it combines some elements from both the first and second games, but the hotel structure of assumedly isolated floors is not Luigi's Mansion. In fact, a hotel is literally not a mansion. Hey there, yeah. Hey you. Yes you pretty little man or woman. Now, if you're asking me, I say I think you might want to support this channel. If you do, then you can share this video with your friends maybe? That'd be cool. Maybe social media, maybe Reddit. Oh wow. You can also follow the Patreon link in the description if you want to support this channel financially. You know, I put a lot of, I really appreciate it. Would really appreciate it of you. Join me on Last Life, a video game community including other content creators. The Last Life Discord is on the forums. Twitter kinda sucks, but that's what my life has devolved into. I wish you a happy independence. If you're not independent, then I sympathize.